Did you know that the average person's carbon footprint is responsible for nearly 10,000 pounds of CO2 each year? That's the weight of an entire car, just from your daily activities. And here's a jaw-dropping fact. If the world's population lived like the average American, we'd need 5 Earths to sustain us. Yes, 5! But don't panic, because there's good news. You can start making a real difference today, without changing your entire life. In this video, we'll break down what a carbon footprint actually is, how to calculate yours in just a few minutes, and most importantly, how to slash it with simple, everyday actions. Ready to find out the surprising things in your daily routine that are adding to your carbon footprint? Stay tuned, because the answers might just shock you. You'll also learn strategies you can implement right away to shrink your footprint and join the fight against climate change. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Carbon Footprint Unveiled. What is it really? Have you ever wondered how much impact your everyday actions have on the planet? A carbon footprint is a measure of that impact, specifically how much carbon dioxide, CO2, is emitted as a result of your activities. From the food on your plate to the energy that powers your home, everything we do releases carbon into the atmosphere. But it's not just about the big things, like driving a car or flying on a plane. Even small actions like charging your phone or buying clothes leave a mark on the environment. To put it into perspective, every time you drive a gas-powered car, you emit around 0.9 kilograms of CO2 per mile. It might not sound like much, but consider this. If you drive 1,000 miles in a month, that's almost 900 kilograms of CO2. And it's not just the car itself that's the problem. Manufacturing the car, building the roads, and even the maintenance all contribute to your carbon footprint. Interestingly, a study by the Global Carbon Project found that in 2019, the average global carbon footprint per person was 4.8 metric tons of CO2. This number can vary drastically depending on where you live. In countries like the US and Canada, it's much higher, with an average of 16.6 tons per person. Meanwhile, in places like India, the number drops to just 1.8 tons. But understanding your carbon footprint is the first step toward change. Once you know what causes your footprint, you can start reducing it. Think of it as a map that shows you where you're heading, but with the power to steer the ship in a new direction. Chapter 2. The Hidden Culprits. Surprising sources of carbon emissions. Did you know that streaming your favorite Netflix show has a carbon footprint? It's true. Data centers that store and stream videos use a lot of energy. The carbon footprint of streaming 1 hour of high-definition video is about 0.6 kilograms of CO2. Multiply that by millions of people watching every day, and it adds up quickly. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Consider your wardrobe. The fashion industry is one of the largest carbon emitters globally, responsible for about 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions, according to the UN. That's more than aviation and shipping combined. Fast fashion, in particular, fuels this problem. A single t-shirt can have a carbon footprint of up to 2.1 kilograms of CO2, from production to shipping. Another surprising culprit is food waste. When food goes uneaten, it decomposes in landfills and releases methane, a greenhouse gas that's 25 times more potent than CO2. In fact, around 1/3 of all food produced globally is wasted, contributing to 8% of global emissions. Imagine all that food, unwanted and unused, adding to the climate crisis. Even something as simple as buying a bottle of water can have an impact. The carbon footprint of producing and transporting bottled water is much higher than you'd expect, around 0.5 kilograms of CO2 per bottle. So if you're grabbing a bottle of water every day, that's almost 200 kilograms of CO2 per year, just for one person. The good news? You have more power than you think to tackle these hidden culprits. By being mindful of what you watch, wear, eat, and drink, you can make a big difference. Chapter 3. Crunching the numbers. How to calculate your own carbon footprint. Calculating your carbon footprint doesn't have to be a complex process. There are plenty of online calculators that break it down into easy-to-understand steps. But if you want to understand the math behind it, let's take a look. Start with transportation. If you drive a car, figure out how many miles you drive in a month and multiply that by the emissions of your vehicle. For example, a car that emits 0.9 kilograms of CO2 per mile would create around 900 kilograms of CO2 in 1,000 miles. For public transport, the calculation is a bit different but still depends on the mode of travel. Trains and buses typically have a smaller carbon footprint per person compared to cars. Next, Add your home's energy use to the equation. Most of the energy we use in our homes comes from fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. So each kilowatt-hour, kWh of energy you consume has a carbon cost. On average, 1 kilowatt-hour of electricity in the US produces around 0.92 pounds, or 0.42 kilograms, of CO2. If your monthly electricity bill is around $100, you can estimate your energy consumption and calculate the CO2 emissions accordingly. Food is another significant part of your footprint. If you follow a meat-heavy diet, it's likely responsible for a substantial portion of your emissions. A study from the Journal of Cleaner Production found that beef has one of the highest carbon footprints of any food, about 60 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of beef. On the other hand, plant-based foods like vegetables and grains have much lower emissions. Lastly, don't forget your shopping habits. The carbon footprint of consumer goods varies widely depending on the product. For example, buying locally produced food and goods reduces the transportation-related emissions, which is a great way to shrink your footprint. By putting these numbers together, you'll get a clear picture of where your biggest emissions are coming from and how to tackle them. Even better, many calculators will give you tips on how to reduce your footprint. Whether it's switching to energy-efficient appliances, walking more, or cutting down on meat, there's always room for improvement. Don't forget to subscribe for more tips on sustainable living and reducing your carbon footprint. Chapter 4. Small shifts, big impact. Easy changes you can make today. Sometimes, making big changes can feel overwhelming. But small shifts in your daily routine can have a significant impact on your carbon footprint. Take transportation, for example. If you're used to driving everywhere, try switching it up. Taking public transport or biking even just once a week can make a noticeable difference. In fact, if just one person in a household switches from driving to biking for short trips, it can reduce their carbon footprint by around 150 kilograms per year. Another easy change is your energy consumption at home. Swapping out incandescent light bulbs for energy-efficient LEDs is an easy fix. A single LED bulb uses about 75% less energy and lasts 25 times longer than a traditional incandescent bulb. Small energy-saving changes, like turning off lights when you leave a room or unplugging electronics when they're not in use, can cut down on your household emissions too. Even your food choices can help the planet. The next time you're at the grocery store, think about buying in bulk. Bulk buying reduces the amount of plastic packaging, which accounts for a huge portion of landfill waste. Plus, switching to a plant-based meal once a week can have a big impact on your carbon footprint. According to the World Economic Forum, reducing meat and dairy intake could lower global emissions by up to 10%. The key here is making changes that fit into your routine without causing too much disruption. By taking small actions that become habits, you're making a long-term difference. For example, using a reusable coffee cup instead of disposable ones every day could save about 23 pounds of CO2 a year. It's these little changes that add up to a big impact over time. Chapter 5. Beyond individual action. Leveraging your community for greater change. While individual actions are crucial, collective efforts can amplify those changes exponentially. If you want to make a real difference, consider joining forces with others in your community. One great example is the concept of carpooling. The average carpool reduces the carbon footprint of each person by about 40%. It's a simple way to cut down on emissions while also saving money on gas. And it's not just about getting to work. You can carpool for school runs, grocery trips, or even to community events. Community gardens are another powerful way to reduce emissions. By growing your own food locally, you not only lower the carbon emissions associated with transporting food, but also reduce the need for pesticides and fertilizers. In cities, urban farming initiatives are growing in popularity, with some neighborhoods even installing vertical gardens on buildings. These practices not only help the environment, but they also promote local food security. Renewable energy projects are also an excellent example of community-based sustainability. In many areas, community solar panels allow multiple households to share the benefits of solar power. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, the potential for community solar to reduce carbon emissions is enormous, up to 2.5 million tons of CO2 per year if fully expanded. Building community connections around sustainability can also help spread awareness and encourage more people to make eco-friendly choices. Local workshops, swap events, or even environmental book clubs can inspire others to think about their own carbon footprints. The more people who are aware, the greater the movement becomes. When communities unite for sustainability, the collective impact is far more powerful than individual actions. It's like a snowball effect, small efforts growing into a massive wave of positive change. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more actionable tips on reducing your carbon footprint. Chapter 6: The Road Ahead: Emerging Trends in Sustainable Living. The future of sustainability looks promising, with groundbreaking trends that could dramatically reduce global carbon footprints. One of the most exciting developments is carbon capture technology. Companies are exploring ways to capture and store CO2 directly from the air. According to a report from the International Energy Agency, carbon capture could account for up to 15% of the global emissions reductions needed to meet climate goals by 2050. Another game-changing trend is sustainable fashion. Brands are now exploring fabrics made from recycled materials, biodegradable textiles, and even innovations like algae-based fabrics. The fashion industry has long been a major emitter, but by shifting to more sustainable production methods, we could see a huge decrease in emissions. Companies like Patagonia and Stella McCartney are leading the charge with transparent, eco-friendly practices. The rise of electric vehicles, EVs, is also reshaping the way we think about transportation. EVs already produce significantly fewer emissions than traditional gasoline-powered cars. But as more renewable energy sources are used to power them, the environmental impact of electric vehicles will decrease even further. Experts predict that by 2030, electric vehicles could reduce global CO2 emissions by nearly 1.5 billion tons. Green architecture is another field that's rapidly evolving. Sustainable building materials, energy-efficient designs, and smart home technologies are revolutionizing the way we live. For example, the use of living roofs that support plant growth is becoming more common in urban areas. These roofs not only provide insulation but also capture rainwater and reduce urban heat island effects. But the most important trend is the shift in mindset. People are becoming more aware of the long-term impact of their choices, and sustainability is starting to be integrated into everyday decision-making. Books like The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Kolbert and This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein have helped bring environmental issues to the forefront of public consciousness, sparking a movement toward change. As new technologies emerge, sustainable living is becoming more achievable and accessible. We're on the road to a greener future, but it will take all of us, individuals, communities, and businesses, to make it happen. The path ahead is full of hope and possibility, with each step bringing us closer to a world where our carbon footprints are reduced and the planet thrives. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates on sustainable living and future trends.